Good evening. So I'm on my way to shopping. As you see, I wear the black shirt, but I have in my bag here also the olive shirt. I will replace it, because I tend to sweat, it's a hot country. So this will be a very short video. But by the way, I really want to, what's the airplane situation? Because I don't get the Caribbean starships, they don't give me constant updates, and it's good that it's not that way. There should be a separation of, authorities. There is the prophets, and there is the admirals. So I don't know what's the situation. So is it the F-15, the F-16? I do know that it must be global because they have no idea what's Israel. They really don't know what it is. They don't care. So, but is it the F-15, F-16, or all the strike fighters, all aircraft that are used for battle, military aircraft? Maybe something with the color, all gray colored aircraft, like the ones that are used in Israel, but also in many other places as well. Not all of them are gray, but many are gray. Many are gray. So there is so much to say. The issue of the symbolic language is a huge issue, and I spoke about that. I cannot reiterate everything, and you just need to get access from Disney Plus. Now I would say that some of my listeners actually do not even live in Earth. They live, so and where they live, I find it hard that you can get access to YouTube. Maybe technically it's possible, by the way. Maybe, it's not impossible technically, but I tend to think that it's probably not possible. So, even if all the all the walls that the Israelis are placing all around me, even if you could have even if they remove these walls, or I don't know, even if it was completely open, which of course it's not, still I would assume that my subscribers outside of Earth cannot actually get access to it. But thankfully we have the bicycle mechanism that allows them to hear what I say. Sometimes, there's some conditions should be applied. So let's discuss colors very, very succinctly, very shortly. And then I'll rest for some time. I'll eat, I prepared 2 sandwiches like the one that I prepared yesterday, but now with olives as well. But now vegan. I'm not sure you would define it vegan, but it was a sort of vegan friendly sandwich. So I took a big bun that I had, that I bought several days ago from the freezer. So I cut it to 2, and each one is pretty big. It's a nice meal, even nice two small meals. And I spread a lot of mustard and also olives with salt. Yes, you're protected from the radiation when I walk outside. Yes, the Israelis are still holding this information from you because they prefer that the whole world will die than that I will be free. Why? Because for so many decades, the Americans told them that that's the preferred situation. And the Americans are financing them for many, many decades. So they do whatever the people with the money are telling them to do it. That's the case. The main reason for this monstrous situation is the fact that the United States is currently, I'm speaking now in context of the post-Soviet era. As you understand, this is a huge historical saga, and they describe things that started to happen during the Ottoman times, and you should, by the way, even thousands of years before that, there was already a connection between the planets. But I limit myself to the Zionist period, but even within this period there were also sort of areas, and not every time is this so now we live in this is the post-Soviet time, which corresponds, which accidentally or not, corresponds very neatly with my own life, because I was born in 1984. I mean, I was a very young child when formally the USSR was disbanded, even though many people say, and there is some truth to it, that if you really want to pick like a date, like, and you don't have to, because I mean, this of course it was like a historical process, but if you really want to pick a date, many people say that many says that it's not like, I mean, this or that declaration of Gorbachev or whatever, or not even like dramatic supposedly events like the breaking of the Berlin Wall, but many say that if you want to pick a date, what date would you pick? Riddle. Like, what's I mean, of course you don't need, there is no real answer, like true answer. The question is what do I have in my mind? Like, that's actually what's the riddle. So the answer is the Chernobyl event. And this is not a new theory of mine. Of course, it's got both known, it's like there is like the formal version and there is kind of a secretive version, but I mean, like in many cases, it's not, I mean, for our context, it doesn't really matter. I mean, both according to the secret version and to the non-secret versions of event, I mean, this was an event that symbolized the inability of the Soviet Union to act as an empire. Where were we? Colors. So colors are important for the neural language, and light is important, even though it's not necessarily easy to understand why, because they do not require like vision as defined as like the perceptions of reflected light waves in different lenses from an object to the sensor that is, I mean, mainly when we speak about the sensor is our eyes. So by this definition of vision, they do not really need that. They are not animals like us. I don't think that they have any kind of like, they have sensors of course, but I mean, they are microscopic, so of course the sensors are completely different than anything that you can find like in a biological animal or synthetic animal that is similar to biological animal. I mean, obviously they don't have the cones that, I mean, you know, that humans have the different types of cones that correspond to like primary colors. Actually, it's not really primary. I mean, there is a question of what are the primary colors. It's let's not be too much, you know. Let's not digress. But I mean, also from artistic and from computer vision point of view, there's a good question of like what are really. I mean, what does it mean the primary color and what are the primary colors? I mean, famously, I mean, you know, they teach children that there is red, yellow, and blue, and you know, and that all colors presumably are a mixture of the three. But this is tautology. Like, I mean, it's kind of a statement that doesn't really describe reality and cannot get false or true values, because I mean, it's like saying the true is true. Yeah, yes, true is true. I mean, because I mean, you can use these three colors to span, like, I mean, in a linear algebra that you can use, like, I mean, like you can use like I mean, I don't remember the English terms, like, I mean, לפרוס את המרחב, like to spend, I don't remember the mathematical English term. Anyways, I mean, you can spend, like, I mean, the whole, what's the whole? You can spend I would say a sphere. Many times it's actually represented as a sphere of colors from the mixtures of these three. But to say that they are the primary colors because they span this sphere is to say that this sphere is the only sphere that can possibly exist, which is not true. It is a sphere of colors. I mean, so it's a sphere of colors that you can span by these three. And by the way, what are these three? It's completely, I mean, there is no definition for what are these three. And even if you like go to like art store, even a high-end art store, like I mean, like professional, like, I mean, very expensive, you know, like, you know, the Rembrandt, or even like there are, you know, the Amsterdam Expert series, and, you know, or there are even more expensive than that. Like, I mean, I never bought the really expensive ones, but even if you like, I mean, you try to search for like colors that are defined as primary and they have like specific number that defines them, like according to some kind of international standard as primary, like primary red, they will not always be the same. So I mean, there is no standard even within, like, I mean, when people try to have a standard. And there is no standardized like physical wavelengths for the red, blue, and so there is no standard at all. So I mean, the idea of that the RGB can span the whole spectrum is more a definition than like, I mean, a statement statement about reality that can be true or false. And famously, it's not the only. I mean, it's not the only way to actually, like, I mean, represent like this, to span the sphere of colors. Not even by artists, by the way. I think that today, like YCMK or something, I don't remember, it's more popular. In computer vision, of course, there are several types. So the issue is that for the Nero's perspective, they don't really need this kind of like, they do not depend naturally on colors, because they have other ways they can communicate with each other, even like in interplanetary scale, and they don't require even like, not only that they don't need light, they can do it faster than the speed of light. So for certain, they do not require light. And this can be manifested in many experiences that I already document. Some things that they say now are actually easy to prove. Like, for example, and was proven in this channel that I mean, that first, I mean, they the way to actually, I mean, the symbols are applied to them only when they can actually watch the symbols, and by watch I mean like by vision, like by the passage of light. Only then the symbols are, I mean, have meaning. So it's like, I mean, basically it's like that. I mean, the symbols apply to them only, I mean, for the symbols to be applied, like for the message to be transferred, you need to imagine the Neros in the containers as microscopic, like humans that I mean, stand like in the liquid and look, like, I mean, all around them, and actually watch, like, I mean, with eyes similar to the eyes of humans, they watch the symbols. And only if they can watch the symbols are in effect. Which is, I mean, it's the intuitive. This is intuitive. It's very intuitive. It's very intuitive, but it's intuitive only like because we are used to depend on vision. But I mean, it's not intuitive at all when you think about the physical nature of this of these creatures. Like, they don't have eyes. They do not depend on light. Why should they? But of course, I mean, it's more like I mean, some kind of rules should be, I mean, applied, because otherwise, I mean, it's very important that the symbolic language have many, like, it's got so many rules, because otherwise, I mean, you wouldn't be able to communicate with these creatures. I mean, it's difficult to learn all the rules, but once you learn them, you understand the rules. You wouldn't want, like, the rules not to be applied, because then you cannot know. I mean, you will be like a wizard that, I mean, each time he throws the, like, I mean, do like the thing with the wind, like something else, something different happens. You don't want it, right? You want to, like, say that you are a wizard. Of course, it's not wizard, it's technology. But I mean, it's like, I mean, you don't want something different to happen each time. Like, I mean, you press like the gas pedal in your car, right? I mean, you want to know that, I mean, this pedal, I mean, the one pedal, I mean, is like accelerate and the other brakes, and you don't want it to be a surprise every time, right? And it's also, but it was also demonstrated, and many times, that they do not require light in order to communicate with each other. Okay, so let's just very briefly speak about colors. In the symbolic language, there is a very important topic of backgrounds, and it took me a lot of time to understand that. Like, what does it even mean, a background? And I've spoken about it so much. Actually, I don't want to repeat myself because I already spoke about it a lot. I'll just say that it's always like, I mean, there is always like an object and the background to the object, and background to the background, and sometimes third background. And this is sometimes this is kind of like, I mean, it's very confusing and misleading, and you don't really understand why it's needed. But when you think about it, like, I mean, after some time you understand it, this is all. This is true for humans as well. Yes, I mean, but many times not in an explicit way. Like, I mean, let's say you enter a museum. I already, I mean, gave this example in the past, but it's a good example metaphor, so I'll use it again. Let's say you enter a museum. So what do you expect to see in the museum? So the answer is that, I mean, there are all sorts of museums. I mean, yes, there are like more old-fashioned like museums, and maybe this is also a museum, you know, just, I mean, like sculpture garden, like I know in the street. But even like this, the definition of sculpture is in a way not intuitive, completely intuitive. Like, it's very Israeli. Like, I mean, it's kind of like brutalist, and you know, and I mean, I didn't like mean to go there. I just walked in the street, but just, I mean, you know, it's very just by accident. I mean, so what is this? This, of course, it's a work of art, right? But why? So why is this a work of art? So, I mean, first of all, you identify it because of the background, because it is something that is placed on a platform that is based on a background of kind of these stones that is placed in a geometrical way, like in a green lawn that is also, like, I mean, that is like, that it's got like a border that you can mainly identify by the color, but also by the kind of like vegetation that you can see. So the background is needed in order to even actually understand that this thing is actually a sculpture. Like without the background and with the you know, and there is no like entrance to. I mean, it's a public place. So I mean, you don't need to pay. There is no guard. So I mean, without the background, without the green lawns, and without the stone like a background. I mean, maybe just if you see this thing here, you would have thought, okay, this is a piece of machinery. I mean, for certain, it is. It's agricultural equipment. It's also true for the red one. These are, I mean, but we know that this is not a piece of machinery, but this is like a work of art, and we know it mostly and most quickly. I mean, there are other ways to know it, but I mean, like the fact that these machines, I mean, we know that they are not. I mean. They are not used today. I mean, there's an anachronism, and so, and why are they here? And like, I mean, I mean, it's out of place, and the fact that it's out of place, I mean, immediately, I mean, there is question, like, I mean, so why it's there? Is it archaeological excavation, or like, I mean, aliens put it here? I mean, and there's many times the simple explanation is that it's a work of art, because, I mean, it explains, I mean, anachronism of objects inside of a context. I mean, like, I mean, especially in urban environment. I mean, hint us very strongly that this is a work of art. But moreover, and even faster than that, and like quicker than that, we can use the backgrounds to understand that this is actually a work of art. And so backgrounds are really important. And let's say that, I mean, this is not that, I mean, that you enter a museum. I mean, not like what I've just now, I mean, accidentally walked into, but like a real museum, a proper museum, like a building with the guard, and maybe you need to pay entrance, or at least, I mean, walk in line and get inside. So what will you actually see inside? So the answer is that, I mean, there are many kinds of museums. I mean, famously Marcel Duchamp put, like, you know, a urinator, like in a museum, like more than 100 years ago. So there's, I mean, you know, the provocation. So you can say he was just a provocateur, but I mean, you need to come to terms with the fact that most of art is provocation. Like, most of art, and this was also true in the past. I mean, it's not that new concept that people might think. And even if we discuss modern arts, what is modern art? I mean, modern art is more than 120 years old. Like, I mean, it's not that modern by meaning of new. But I mean, what can you expect to see in a museum? So let's say that this is like an old-fashioned museum, like the Museum of Art in Tel Aviv, like in Shaul HaMelech Street. So it's an old-fashioned museum with, I mean, different, I mean, exhibitions that are changing. So, I mean, there are all sorts of rooms. You can go. I mean, you can, you know, walk inside the room, and typically what you see in the room is mainly some sculptures, but mainly paintings. So, I mean, the question is, what is the work of art? Now you search for the work of art, because they told you that this museum contains work of art, and supposedly you're an alien, and you want to, I mean, you're an alien, and you like to, I mean, to study the maybe you already destroyed all humanity, maybe you intend to do it, maybe you, I mean, for simplicity, let's say that it's after like you cleaned all humanity from the place and it's empty and nice and not noisy, you know, as we like it. So now there is it's such a quiet now, after they are all, I mean, you know, שוכני עפר, you now, I mean, but I mean, still, I mean, everything else is still there because, I mean, you are, you know, advanced alien that just, I mean, you know, radiate like the scum, not everything else. You don't need to use like atomic bombs or, you know, primitive weapons like that. So now everything is quiet. So you start to go around, like, you know, freely and happily. So you enter the museum because you're still curious. Like, I mean, so what is this thing that is called a work of art? Like that humans, like, they like to do. I mean, when they existed, they like to create work of art. So you enter the Museum of Art in Tel Aviv. So you don't need to pay because, I mean, there is no one to guard the place, which is fine. And also there is no line, which is great. So you just go inside and you enter a room. So now what do you see in the room? So mostly you see paintings. Okay, so you see a painting. So the question is, what is the work of art? So presumably this is a very easy question, like the work of art is the painting. What's the problem here? But the question is, I mean, but where does it start and where does it end? Like the whole museum is a work of art? By the way, sometimes the answer is yes. In some museums, the museum itself is a work of art. But let's speak about like traditional museums, like the Tel Aviv Museum of Art, which is kind of like old-fashioned like museum. So you enter so the alien like enters the room. So he sees the painting. So what's the work of art? So I mean, you can ask, I mean, what's the question? Like, I mean, maybe it's like that. Like, I mean, like, yeah, this Castro, the red sign, so this is the work of art. But almost always, the canvas will be painted on canvas, almost always. And it's almost always, or like 99.9% of the cases, there will be a frame. So what's the work of art? The canvas or the canvas plus the frame? And you should know that many times, I mean almost always, the frames for works of art were not picked by the artist. And many times they were changed like throughout the centuries if they exist for a long time. And so typically, but everyone will agree that the frame can be of great meaning. Not always, but many times it does. Many times the frames is very important. Like, I mean, it's part of the artistic expression of the object. And if you change the frame or you remove it, I mean, you change the work of art. So it might not be the canvas, but the canvas plus the frame. So then, I mean, but even though it's, I mean, the painter, the name that is under like in the description below is of a person that did not create the entire work of art, but only part of it. But again, you can say, okay, the work of art is detached from the author. Like, I mean, people started to say during the 1960s that, I mean, you know, and the author doesn't even have like authority, which is paradoxical linguistically saying, over the work of art. Fine, okay. So you say, okay, so the work of art is actually both the canvas, which was created by the author. There is also issue of restorations, but let's not get into it. This is, you know, the classical ship of Theseus paradox, because for really old work of arts, I mean, there is no atom in the museum that was actually put in place by Michelangelo. Probably there is not a single atom in the Sistine Chapel that was actually placed in where it is by Michelangelo. I mean, every atom in the Sistine Chapel was placed where it is by people that are not Michelangelo. But this is an ancient paradox. But let's omit this paradox. But still, we are not done yet. I mean, the conundrum continues because. So what's outside the framework? I mean, so we scan, like we see. Okay, so there is the canvas, the framework, but there is also the wall. What about the wall? So mostly the wall was not just chosen randomly. Like presumably someone with an artistic inclination, probably the curator of the museum or some other function in a museum that is professional function, not like managerial function, which means he or she is like a person with art mindset, artistic mindset. They chose the room and they chose the background, they chose the lighting, and sometimes lighting could be the light can dramatically change what you actually see. This is true for many, like this is known like for example for like yeah, also I already mentioned Rembrandt because there is like a brand name for like for oil colors, and but he was also an artist, of course. So I mean, you know, he's got the one night watch and also like very famous. He was very famous for games of like light and the darkness. But I mean it's interesting to that historically the way that his works actually looked like when he painted these works were probably very different than how it is today, because after all the restorations throughout like hundreds of years, the actual painting, we have many reasons to believe that it was restored, gradually restored to be something that is very different, specifically with regards to light and shadow. And this is not just a simple like a minor issue, because it's a great it's considered to be of great significance to his works of art, like the issue of lights and shadows. So if the restorers, throughout the centuries, greatly changed like the lightnings and the shadows in his paintings, it means that this is really it's no longer no longer his works. These are now different works that were based on his works, but he's not actually the artist, but the restorers over like the centuries. So even the issue of light can change it, and so who controls the lights? Again, the curator or the architect of the museum. But there is also the question of like what kind of walls are there and what to see in the vicinity of and all of these questions greatly change the meaning or the artistic expression. And meaning is not the correct term. I would say like the value of artistic expression that can be deduced from a given work of art. And all of that to say that the issue of backgrounds also exists in human symbolic expressions. And I should say that for our context, the difference between artistic expression and symbolic expression is very shallow. Or that I don't say that it's the same, but I say that these are very close concept, like artistic expression and symbolic expression. Now, so there is the issue of backgrounds, and it's a huge issue, and let's put it like as a teaser for next videos, because I want to to drink some water and maybe eat my juicy sandwich with the charcoal oil and the mustard and oils and olives from the crucible. So I would just say that so before we stop, I will speak just a few words regarding colors, because I promised you to speak about colors. So very, very simply, I would say that some colors are like important for the neurons, and this is not actually, it's not very surprising, because these are these are accidentally or not mostly the same colors that are always important for human cultures throughout history. Because humans didn't not all humans give the same importance to all colors, but there are colors that are known to be important for humans, and mostly it's like that for the neurons as well. And it should be just in one sentence mentioned that the perception of colors is not always the same between humans, not only because of biological differences, but also because of cultural standards. Like famously, the Greeks, some say that they didn't know what's blue, what is blue, and because someone, I think he was actually a president of the United States or some other politician, someone maybe 100 years ago, read the Iliad and the Odyssey of Homer, and he noticed that nowhere the blue color cannot be found. So he checked other texts, like famous Greek texts, and again, they never used the word blue. So he came to the conclusion that is actually, until this day, there is no one consensual explanation. It's a phenomenon. Then to this day, there is no one consensual explanation to what's really is going on over here. I should just say that yes, it is true that mostly, throughout centuries of ancient texts, of these Greek texts, it's true that it's a fact that they didn't mention blue. This in itself is true. But the question is, what does this it implies? So you can ask, okay, so what do they want to? So they knew that some people have blue eyes, and they actually found it interesting and attractive many times, like today. In many in the Mediterranean, most people do not have blue eyes, but a little minority do have it, and many times they are found, both men and women. It's considered to be an attractive trait. So just like today, it was like that 3,000 years ago. It wasn't common, but it existed in the Mediterranean, and these people were, many times they considered attractive. And so how are they described in these ancient texts? And also another question is, what about the sky? Surely the sky it has a color, right? It's impossible that throughout all text of Greek antiquity you cannot find the color of the sky. So the answer to both questions is silver. So now you can say, so maybe they just didn't have the word for silver was just what it's just a linguistic issue. Yeah, they meant to say blue, but they say silver, and we don't understand it because we are having a translation error. But this is problematic because the word silver appears a lot in ancient texts, and it's because silver was the widely known phenomenon. Even though, do you know what's the color of silver? It's kind of a tricky question because the answer is white. Silver is the color of contaminated silver, and almost all silver is contaminated. But if it's not, it's white. I wanted to go to the bank to get some money, so I will do a U-turn. No, let's go from here. I want to go to the bank. So it's unlikely to just be a linguistic issue. There's something deeper here, which is probably psychological. Probably when they actually looked at the sky or at the eyes of people that we consider they have blue eyes, probably they actually see something that, in their psychology was, considering their biology was not different, and there is no way, why should it be? There is a very slim chance that these Greeks had different biology, but it's only 2,500 or 3,000 years ago. It's not that much of a time. It's very understandable. Why should their biology be any different than yours? It's really a stretch to think that they had different biology. Almost certainly they had the same biology. So probably there was some kind of psychological effect that they interpreted the bluish color of some people's eyes and also the sky as silver. All this is kind of I was reminded of all that. I knew it years ago, but I was reminded of that because when I noticed that blue is not an important color for the Neos. It was evident for me that it's not an important color for them, and I began to wonder, maybe they do not unlike some humans, not all humans, but unlike some humans, they just don't think of it as an important color, for some reason. I don't know why. It's an open question. I was reminded of this issue because I understood that it's not important for them. Blue is not important. What is important is, first of all, black and white, which are the most important colors in any known human culture since forever. And the third one is red, which is also the third most important color in any human culture since forever. Yellow is also important for them. By the way, any primary color, so RGB, which is used in computer systems, I mean, traditionally is not the three colors that are, I mean, considered primary, but red, yellow, and blue, if I'm not mistaken. And green, I mean, because green can be presumably combined. Just to say that, I mean, there is no really standard of like what's the primary colors. So yellow is important, orange is important, red is important, black and white are important, and also silver is important. Silver is also very important. And I would say that the standard way, like if you want to symbolize something like, which kind of be like the standard way to symbolize something, like I mean, like I would say that if they had like a writing system, and I'm sure they had, but I have no idea what it is, so we only communicate with like in like a visual way. But the standard way, like I mean, of producing, I would say, neutral symbols, or in other ways, like like the standard way of writing, I'm sure that if they wanted to write something for me to understand, like if I could have understood, I mean, so for humans, it's mostly like the black fonts over white background. It's almost always like the default, it's the default way to write things like since a long time ago, even though not since forever. It should be said it's not since forever. But for them, it's silver over black. I don't know why, but that's the way it is. And although white backgrounds are associated with death. And this is unintuitive to most people today, but it should be said that it's not universal in Earth. I mean, some people, like I know that they wear white clothes to like funerals. I mean, and not black, like I mean, like in Israel and in many other places. So it's not, even in Earth, it's not universal. So for them. Now, another important thing is that for them, black is not neutral. Like, both white and black are not neutral. And like, I mean, black is the color of space, but space is something that is presumably someone put it inside. Like, when you watch space, I mean, it's not that you watch nothing. Even if you see no stars at all, you just see the blackness of space. So you see a piece of space that presumably someone, like the creator of this place, whatever you mean, like, took like, I mean, block of space and put it in there, and now there is like a space, and put another block of space on top of it, and another block, and many blocks of space, and that's how space was created. It's not nothing, like, it's not neutral. Like, neutral is like if it's completely transparent. And transparent mediums are also important. You can see it actually a lot in many of my constructions. Transparent mediums are very important for the symbolic constructions, and they are needed many times. Transparent objects are, I mean, not invisible. I mean, transparent but not invisible. Transparent objects are kind of like, I mean, they represent the neutral, like, they are what we can call space. And what we call space for them is pieces of black, like, stuff that was placed in and if it wasn't there, presumably it would have been like, I mean, it would have been like, I mean, transparent. I mean, it's difficult to visually, like, I mean, you know, to visually like conceptualize it, but you should understand that, I mean, almost everything, when humans like visually think about space or try to visualize space, it's almost always, whether they know it or not, it's almost always symbolically. Like, nothing like really looks like in space the way that you think it does. Like, nothing, even not the sun, like nothing. I mean, the only thing that looks somehow like, I mean, it's very famous but very modern conceptualization is the Earth itself, because since 1972, when the Blue Pearl photograph was photographed for the first time, it was historical photograph. But it should be said that even this photograph, the photograph of the Blue Pearl, is heavily doctored, like even the original one. And since then, there are other like versions of, but I mean, they did like a color photograph that, I mean, that you can see the whole, I mean, all of, like, I mean, of course, only half of it, but half of the, I mean, of Earth, like in one shot. But it should say that even the original one for the 70s was already, I mean, they already had photoshopped in, as you know very well, during the 1970s, and it was already photoshopped very heavily. And it's like the astronaut that took this picture didn't actually see what you see in this very famous photograph. but I mean, still it somehow looks like that. I'm okay. But for other like objects, certainly like objects like I mean the sun or all sort of like celestial bodies, galaxies, almost everything. It doesn't look like what you see in the pictures at all, and most of it probably cannot even be visualized by humans. I mean, they don't look like anything. I mean, you cannot really say how they look because they cannot be looked by. I mean, the property of the thing that you can look on it cannot be applied to most of the celestial objects. So I mean, it's almost always a symbolic, even if it looks very nice, and and now we have like they have the Americans, they have like a new telescope, so there should be like a flux of new photographs. I guess maybe there are. I mean, I'm not following, but maybe there's already like a very. I mean, a lot of many photographs, like the James Webb Telescope. So it should be said that it's always what you really see is a symbolic interpretation of reality that was created by all sorts of like mechanism, like both AI and just artists, human artists that manipulate like the sense or output to look like something that humans can visually grasp. In general, as I said many times, the default kind of like representation of an object is to be like brighter than the background, and if it's the other way around, many times it symbolizes the negative of the object. Like if it's kind of like so this McDonald's sound, you see McDonald's sound, like let's look at that. Just the M, the bright M over the red. So the M is brighter. So it means that so it means that in this place you can find McDonald's, whatever it is. Maybe you don't know what it is, but if you know, then it's here. But if it was the other way around, if like the M was darker than the red background, it means that there is no McDonald's here, or don't expect to find McDonald's here. And although it should be said that if it's things that are completely white, generally it means that they are dead. And it means that they are dead. And if it's completely gray or mostly gray, if it's mostly gray, it means that it's it's like not part of the symbolic, like of the construction, and this is actually can be seen many times in many times it can be seen in actually like drawings of humans, specifically of maps, or even like satellite images that you maybe many times you have like a map, like it's like you have like you paint like you have like the map of England, for example. Okay, so but almost always maps are square, they're rectangles. Almost always. So the rectangle, you might you might also see like maybe you might get a little bit of France and also of Southern Ireland, and maybe you want to convey. So maybe it's a colored map. Never mind if it's like satellite image or photo or just drawing. Never mind. It's true to all of these. So you want to convey that, and maybe the word like England or the UK is written like in below, and maybe you just want to refer to England. So you want to exclude North Ireland, and maybe you want to exclude Wales or Scotland. So in any way, many times, the difference between, but you don't want to not draw them because it will be unrealistic, and if it's orthophoto, it's impossible because you took if it's a photograph, you took it's there because it was photographed. You cannot delete it like from the map, and it wouldn't make sense. So you want to like distinguish between the things in the frame on the background that are part of the meaningful symbol and the things that are not part of it. And many times the way that humans do it is just by that everything that is part of the object is in color and the rest is grayed. Like in our example, like if you see like a bit of France, like the north, it will be like colored gray, and also South Ireland will be colored gray, but the rest will be like in all sorts of colors. So this will mean that just know that the places that are in gray are ignore these pay. I mean, they are not part of the message. Like whatever the message is, maybe you want to bombard like England with radiation, or maybe you want to give them like, I don't know, like a giant. I mean, maybe like a huge golden nugget, like as a gift. I don't know. Whatever it is, good or bad, doesn't matter. I mean, it means that the message should only be relevant to the places that are not great. And it's very common, like in humans, and this is also true for the Neros. I mean, that's the way to exclude something from, like, I mean, so there are actually other ways of exclusion, but let's maybe speak about it some other time, because I really need to eat and drink. So let's stop for now. Although I arrived at the bank and I want to get the money.